Hungry Lamu is back again with a major update and new ending expanding on the plot and the mysterious backstory of the antagonist. The llama, known as Lamu, to whether he is a human, an animal, a fairy, or a hybrid. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator. Welcome to Hungry Lamu with a new update which makes the story much more interesting. If you have any game suggestions or any game theories, let me know on my Twitter and subreddit. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. As we learned from the first two endings, Lamu Forest Park was infamous for mysterious murders taking place there, with it being in some way off limit to campers to avoid getting killed. Regardless, 4 campers known as Tasha, Ken, Leon, and the protagonist whose name was redacted decide to visit the park, not unknowingly stumbling upon it, but intentionally pre-planning their journey, making their trip a challenge rather than a nice peaceful camping experience. The game starting through the perspective of Lamu, it's depicted in a cartoony manner where Lamu is accompanied by a voice simply known as the narrator. It's unclear if the voice is the result of Lamu's imagination, created after years of being cramped in a cave, barely having any normal human interaction, or an actual voice that was created after an evil experiment, which we'll learn about later on. The narrator explains how Lamu is hungry and he needs to find food, who in other parts of the story directly instructs Lamu to perform certain actions. Actions that in better parts are questionable. As Lamu awakens in a cave, he observes his surroundings being littered with almost fully eaten fruits, which of course are the human remains. More precisely, skulls, which Lamu has collected, being the notorious way Lamu kills his victims. Something interesting that adds a lot more to the story is a set of books and papers in the corner of the cave which belong to Lamu, but stuff that Lamu cannot interact with anymore as he has lost the ability to read. The story continues as before, with Lamu observing the world through a childish perspective with a great imagination, toning down the violence to PG rating G for general audience, seeing the human heads as fruits to fill his empty stomach. As Lamu removes the heads of all of the campers, as that's how he typically kills his victims, seemingly having a thing for eating heads, which he refers to as fruits, the screen goes to black with the narrator in a malicious color tone saying how Lamu is still hungry. The perspective suddenly changes to the last surviving camper, the protagonist, who only managed to survive after deciding to take a leak behind a tree far from the campsite. Reading the map to navigate his way, it's revealed how these youngsters made a stupid decision to come to the forest park as a challenge to achieve, I don't really know what exactly. Who in their right mind would think, let's go on an active human hunting ground as a challenge? The map shows how the group decided to meet at midnight going to the park, with the poor Moki getting caught in the crossfire as she didn't have much say in the group's illogical decision. The map further shows a cursed cave which the group has crossed as off limit, being a place that they are even afraid to visit. The protagonist, however, after finding all of his friends butchered in gruesome manners, decides to go there, feeling it's safer to be there than in the open, being easily hunted. As he goes into the cave, it's revealed how it's the exact same cave Lamu woke up in, being surrounded by eaten fruits. The fruits, of course, were the representation of fully eaten skulls with no flesh attached to them, depicting how Lamu thinks the heads are fruits, hence why he plucks them out clean. Further in the cave, the protagonist finds the most important aspect of the story, expanding much more on the backstory of Lamu. In the corner of the cave, 1 storybook and 2 torn pages are located, which all are scribbled over by red ink, being the story of a fictional humanoid llama. One of the pages is torn with red ink all over it, repeatedly saying only fruit, showing how the serial killer, Lamu, only wants to eat fruit and not meat, depicting that his perspective and mind is compromised, blurring the line between reality and fiction, seeing human beings as fruits. The page reads how llama is a herbivore and only eats fruits, as meat would make him feel bad. A mysterious line is then written that he'd rather eat fruits than a dead duck. This clearly confirms that Lamu probably hallucinates and sees the world in an actual cartoony way, mixing up humans and live beings as vegetables and fruits. The next torn page shows a father and mother llama making a fruit cake for the baby llama who is very hungry, with the story explaining how it's the child llama's birthday, with him being very happy and grateful. Despite that, Lamu has crossed both mother and father figures, referring to the father as evil, which depicts that his actual parents are dead, with his father having had been a terrible person, at least to Lamu's perspective. The mother, on the other hand, has been referred to as someone he misses, showing how the mother was a good person who treated him nicely. Finally, reading a storybook titled As the Llama is Hungry, the backstory of Lamu is explained. Lamu has modified the title from Llama is Hungry to Lamu is Hungry, calling himself Lamu. The ownership line of the book has a faint name which seems to be Larry, revealing that the real name of Lamu used to be Larry. Yet again, Lamu has crossed out the representative sketches of his parents, with his father referred to as a monster. Reading the book, the protagonist notices how it's been modified by someone, telling an entirely different story, somehow linked to the story in the book. As it's written in the storybook, how the humanoid animal llama wakes up, a birthday hat is drawn above his head, depicting how it was Larry's birthday, the person who has become the cannibal serial killer, Lamu. The next page on the book shows how the character in the story leaves the house, but Lamu has modified it by drawing two tombstones, seemingly belonging to his deceased parents, with himself shown as a llama leaving the house, being unhappy. The next page then shows the llama eating fruits, having a stained mouth, while Lamu has repeatedly written, "They are fruits," as if trying to convince himself desperately that the things that he ate in real life were fruits, and not whoever or whatever humans he actually indulged himself with. This probably reveals the point Lamu, or in this case Larry, had a mental breakdown, not differentiating between reality and fiction, with his perspective changing into art style of the book, thinking he lives in an imaginary land, the world of the storybook. The next page reveals how the story character Llama returns home happy, but the modified version shows Lamu being sad, with police officers investigating the house, seemingly investigating the death of his parents. The writing also suggests that Lamu was forced to leave his house, saying how much he misses it, and how he has no home anymore. It's possible he was the one who killed his parents and ran away after the police wanted to investigate the murders. On the page before the last, the protagonist finds a torn piece of a newspaper article about someone called Dr. Eric Bruns, who performed experiments fusing animals and humans in hopes of finding cure for incurable diseases. Despite his determination, upon peer review, it was found that Dr. Bruns' studies and experiments results were falsified, with them not actually finding any way to fuse humans with animals. A concerning line, however, suggests that Dr. Bruns claimed extracting animal DNA and placing it into human bodies showed groundbreaking results on how the humans showed animalistic traits. Behind the newspaper, Lamu has written that it's all his fault and that he didn't want to do anything with his experiments, with a final line reading how Lamu is still hungry. As the protagonist places the book down and turns around, he observes in horror how Lamu has been behind him all along, when he suddenly lunges at him and ends his life. A newspaper article is then shown which reports on a massacre in which the Bruns family were the victims. Dr. Eric Bruns, alongside his wife Tina Bruns, were found missing their heads, with their child missing. The authorities commence an investigation to find the murderer and to look for the missing child. This of course suggests that the missing child is no other than Larry, who was upset at his father calling him evil and a monster after turning into Lamu, a hybrid between a human and an animal llama. The father, who was a scientist who took on studies of human and animal fusion sciences, was exposed as a fraud, but his determination didn't stop him from continuing his work. Possibly when all of the fundings were cut off, he resorted into using his own child, Larry, for his experiments, which eventually show success, with Larry turning into a hybrid llama. This, however, backfires as Larry loses a great part of his humanity, becoming more animalistic, flipping the furniture around the house, and savagely killing his parents, seeing their heads as fruits. As Larry had a storybook given to him about a hungry llama, seemingly for his birthday, the experiment causes him to see himself in the storybook's world. Somehow, the experiment triggering a part of his brain to hallucinate and blur the lines between reality and fiction, becoming a dangerous being. The narrator who is accompanying Lamu could simply be a figment of his imagination or could in fact be the result of the experiment, giving the narrator of the story a very real presence in Lamu's head, which directs him what to do and what he does, telling him to find food, as the character of the storybook is always hungry. Larry also sees himself as a llama, drawing similarities between himself and the character of the book. It's clear that he's a hybrid, as in one of the other endings, human bite marks are found on the corpses, depicting how he is part human and part animal. In his imaginary world, which is inspired by the storybook, Larry, or Lamu, sees himself as a herbivore, someone who doesn't tolerate meat, as confirmed from his writings on the book and the pages, but nonetheless, he eats humans, especially their heads. It's also clear that he sees the human heads as fruits, hence why he plucks them out and consumes them, happy that he's a herbivore and not eating meat. If only he knew that he's actually eating flesh. By the looks of it and the promising plot, there could be many more updates expanding on the story. Make sure to stay tuned right here, as I'm quite invested and will make more videos covering all of the new updates. Anyway, it's been your host Star. Thank you for being here. Until the next video, have a fantastic day.